corrections or changes to the agenda? If
I'll
not,
make a motion that we approve the agenda as presented.
Excellent. I'll second it.
Motion has been made and seconded to accept the agenda as presented. All those in favor vote aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, motion passes. We have minutes from our previous meeting, our April 10th meeting. Any corrections or changes to that? And if not, we have
I'll
a motion
move
to
to
approve.
approve the min.
I'll second it.
Motion has been made by Stacy, second by Hal, to approve the minutes as presented. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor vote aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed. Motion passes, minutes are approved. Public hearing, the first item we have is a request by Jack McDonnell and Dan MacKenzie for a conditional use permit to operate a single-unit lodging facility in an existing single-family home located in a resort commercial neighborhood zone district at 107 Fifth Avenue West. Jack, do you want to come up and you have anything to say or add to the application?
Not really.
Okay.
I'll answer any questions if anybody has it.
All right, well, this is a public hearing, so it's, anybody has an opportunity to offer comments or anything that they want to offer regarding the application. Is there anybody that would like to make a comment? Hearing none, we'll close the public hearing and open it up to planning commission discussion. This is a home located in the resort commercial neighborhood district on the old Gunflint Trail. I think you're probably all familiar with it. Situated between the Feather Nest Motel and the Sawtooth Cabins.
Is that Max Nichols?
Max, yes, Max's property, so bounded both sides by commercial type uses, lodging type uses. Their request is to operate a single unit lodging facility. And they've asked this for it to be an 18-month permit since they are going to be traveling. Is that my understanding? You're going to be traveling and that you want to be able to utilize this as a lodging facility during that period of time when you're going to be gone. And then after that, you would then live there at some point, or would you continue to come back to request?
We don't know yet, but most likely to come back. Could you come up to the? It will most likely come back.
Uh-huh.
We don't know yet. We're exploring options.
Is there a reason why that you're asking for just the 18 months, or, I mean, if it was,
Not really. I mean, if it makes a difference, we could do it permanently. We just don't have that plans out that far. So, but we do know we want to do it for 18 months. So,
yeah, I'm not familiar that we've ever granted one on a
Short-term.
short-term basis.
Yeah, and once you have it, I mean, you can use it or not use it.
right. Well, then, would we have to modify it, or
No, because it's, I mean, if you come back and you're living there, that's fine, that's a
Right.
permitted use. So.
But in order to, if I were to continue it after 18 months, I would have to,
Well, if we just granted a conditional use permit
for 18 months, I'd have to,
well, if we granted it for 18 months, then
Yeah.
you'd have to come back and get another permit
Yeah.
Yeah.
in the future. If we just granted it to utilize that as
As you wish.
a single unit lodging facility, you could still live there, because
Yeah.
it's residential is a permitted use in that district. I mean,
okay.
so, I mean, it's,
I guess we made a mistake. I'd rather have it, you know, in case we want to continue to do it.
Yeah.
That's really makes more sense.
Yeah.
Yep.
I didn't understand that we could come back. You understand,
Yeah.
we didn't understand that if we were living there, that we could live there and then have that still in place.
You can
Explain that to
do
me.
both.
Yeah.
Yes, you
Okay.
can do both.
Yeah.
you know, Because
Yeah.
it's that
That,
particular district allows
okay.
both of those uses.
Yeah.
So, The other issue that we usually talk about is the requirement that there be an off-street parking
There is.
space available to, you know.
It
and-
seems like there is right there.
and it just doesn't, it doesn't state that in here. I mean, there's a garage, and that to make sure that the garage would be accessible to, or would the garage be accessible to the,
In the application, there was it said it was off-street parking, so, but there is a garage and space
Yeah,
off-street parking.
and usually the space is what,
the area in front of the garage is what you're saying is the off-street parking?
Correct.
And can you actually fit a car in there without having to cross the sidewalk?
Oh, yeah, I park there all the time. I don't use my garage.
Okay, I just want to make sure
Yeah.
that there's enough room
Yes.
to
Yeah.
adequately fit a car without encumbering passage on the sidewalk.
It does, yes.
Yes. But Mike's comment was you need 2 off-street parking.
But the ordinance says that there's only a requirement for 1.
Is that what it says?
Has anybody complained about this? All right.
Nope.
1 off-street parking space is required for each rental or living unit.
Okay.
1 additional parking space is required for each non-resident employee, but there are no employees on the site, so.
Yeah.
So there's only 1 required parking space by ordinance.
did Mike give any? Yeah.
Also, let the record know that Michael McHugh, you know, did.
Did show up.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Thank you. Well, welcome.
Yeah.
Any other questions
No.
by commission members?
Steve?
Yeah, I do.
This is your chance, yeah.
So do we know, because this is kind of more than one usage of this district, what the percentage is of the uses?
I mean, just by eyeball, but I don't know that we have anything else. And I can think off
I don't
the
think
top
we've
of
ever
my head.
compiled that type of information.
Yeah.
Okay, so
But you did.
kind
what
of.
you're saying, Steve?
Yes,
Okay.
but it's just my numbers, and I'm
Well, I'd be curious.
just saying. So I did on the block, above the block, across the street, below
Mhm.
the street.
Did you do the whole district or just that?
No, just that area.
Okay.
Courthouse,
Yeah.
back down.
Yeah.
Less than 25% of the lots here are homesteaded,
Mhm.
available for long-term housing. This house has been homesteaded, well, I went back to 2003, all those years. The estimated market value is $199,000 in 2018. I'm concerned that we're taking another house off of availability for long-term use, which we know is in need in our community.
Yep.
And the libertarian in me struggles with this one, saying he should be able to do what he wants with his property. The democratic socialist in me says we have to think of the greater good of the community.
Right.
So I am really concerned that here we are,
Right.
going to make a decision about a use that could be used for somebody to move into our community, even if it's only 18 months.
Right.
And what if that's a family of 4, and one gets a job at the nursing home, and one gets a job at North House? There were 17 jobs in the paper on Friday when I read it, at least 17. What if they have a couple kids and can enroll in our school district? There's a dilemma here for me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I understand, you know, the concern, and I think we've addressed, you know, at least
We
talked
are.
about that a number of times in terms of, you know, how do we look at providing housing for people, you know, residents and families, and that promote the good health of the community, you know, create jobs and, you know, provide workers, build the schools, do all those things. Yeah, so when you start to erode the base of that housing away, I mean, it creates a bigger problem. And, you know,
I think in this case, we have, I agree with you. But I think in this particular instance, we have somebody who, that is a permitted use in that zone. And so, and hold on.
Okay.
And so insofar as this particular instance goes, it's like, wow, that seems fair, that he should be able to do that. However, I would say, going forward, we should maybe think about this zone. It seems like it's not really doing what we want it to do. And I feel like it would be better repurposed into an R1 zone and out of what it presently is. And that way, and not let those people continue to do what they've done. They've already been able to do it all this time, so like Max and whoever else, they've been doing it, so fair enough, keep doing it. He wants to do it now, totally fine, but maybe going forward, we say, hey, let's relook at this. And that is part of what we're talking about doing in terms of the whole city and looking at our zoning laws and how that will help or not help having more housing. So, and this is just my 2 cents. I was just like, yeah, I don't know. That sucks to lose another house, especially one that was homesteaded before. So,
Yeah, it's a valid point. I think anytime a home is lost, it is a concern. How do we replace that with, something else? If it's an expansion in the community that, that we're looking for, well, we certainly have an opportunity with our next item on the agenda
Right.
to, create new lots that will allow for development of residential homes in the city, and, we may not be able to prevent all of these homes from being converted, although we've taken, I think, a pretty clear stand in the R1 and R2 districts to say that is something that we don't think is acceptable and appropriate, that those areas should be maintained. The other districts, the mixed-use district and this old Gunflint, neighborhood, are obviously different types of places. Obviously, their 2 neighbors are both commercial lodging facilities.
But look behind, the street behind, and
That's
who's
not
living there?
That's not in the same district, though.
they're in the different zones.
But you're impacting those people
Sure.
who have built there. And now, all of a sudden, that block has become more commercial than residential.
And yet, it was probably, it's been that way for a long time.
And I think I know why that was put into the plan, is because that was the old Gunflint. And
It
we
was.
had commercial, and we wanted to
Yeah.
have a spot to continue that. Now, city just agreed to spend $15,000 to look at all this. So, one of my give and takes here were, what if we only did this for a year? Because what if we spend this $15,000 and this company comes in and says, you know what, you really shouldn't do it this way forever. You should make some changes. But now, if he gets it for a lifetime, we've just locked that another one in again.
Well, yes and no. You granted a permit, but if it's their home and they're going to choose to live there,
But if they don't, and they sell it, that permit goes with that house, and we have no control then.
yeah, I think, you have to live with the ordinance that you have in place. You can't conjecture that
Well,
in a year from now, that there might be
it's zoned.
something different.
It's zoned to fit the use of what he's requesting for.
It is.
Yes, it is.
It is. It allows this type of use as a conditional use. Yes, that's what the zone district does allow.
So
But
because,
the principal use of this district, according to this document, the principal use are 1 to 2 family attached dwellings, parks and rec areas owned by government.
Yep.
This is not a principal use.
A permitted,
And
not a principal, permitted.
permitted principal use is the way the language is.
Yes.
And this is not a permitted principal use, which, when I read this, that the fact that they stated that I think that whoever designed this thought this is important. This is the first thing we want there. And now these conditional use permits are going against.
Well, I think the idea of a conditional use permit is that there are uses that could be allowed in that particular district, but generally, they bear some kind of additional consideration because of the type of use that it might be. And it's not to say that those uses are any less allowed in that district, it's just that there's a review process before before those can be granted. And, if there's conditions that need to be put in place, or if it's totally inappropriate, then the permit shouldn't be approved. If there can't be conditions placed on the use of the property that make it fit within the standards of that district, then it shouldn't be approved. But if the conditions can be placed on it and, it fits within the district, then my belief is always that we have an obligation to grant that conditional use permit because those are uses that are allowed in that district. They're just that they're allowed in a different fashion than
That's my point.
a permitted
And
use.
because of that, I would make a motion to approve this subject to the conditions that are listed.
We have a motion, is there a second?
I'd like to continue discussion for a little bit, Hal, just to have more conversation here with Stace about this. I mean, under the items that we do consider, where are you finding yourself?
Number 4, the location and character of the proposed use is considered to be consistent with a desirable pattern of development for the area. And I think desirable pattern of development are 1 to 2 family attached dwellings and parks and rec areas owned by government. That's the desirable use.
Okay.
So the motion dies for lack of a second. Are there other questions, comments, considerations you want us to?
No, that goes through my page.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
Thank you. So,
Um,
anybody else?
Mr. Mike, or Michael?
I think that because it's zoned, I mean, we've talked about, and that the county's been given some money, they're gonna do some research, and we've talked about, thinking long-term and what's our, strategy long-term. I believe in that, I agree with that, I have, sympathies and empathies and concerns about the same problems that we've talked about. This spot is in the zone, so what do? My question is, how do you come up with this as the principal use versus, why not? How did you come up with that?
It's here in the zoning,
It's
subdivision 2.
it's just the language that is used for all the zone districts. So there's permitted principal uses, and then there's conditional uses that are allowed within each of the zone districts.
Yeah. And that's, there lies the rub.
Well, it does seem, it is a rub, it's conflicting, because, you're zoned to be able to do things, legally it should be able to happen, and then you have this guiding language.
Well, if you look at the purpose, statement too, I think that gives a little bit, this is the purpose and intent of the Resort Commercial Neighborhood District is to permit the designation of suitable locations for small-scale, low-intensity resort commercial facilities within or adjacent to areas or neighborhoods which are essentially residential in nature. So, it's saying that quite clearly, that recognizing that this is a unique area, that there's commercial and residential, but that it would fit within there. And
But essentially residential.
well, and
So there,
that's
goes back to my percentages.
Yep.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Well, it is. I don't think it is essentially residential in nature. Personally, it's not. Especially that block is. If you take and put this into it, that whole stretch from from Second Street to First Street to Second Street, is, would be
Consistent.
lodging, commercial lodging.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's the same thing on the the block below that too. You have, on the other side, you have, you know, Russell's Cabins, and that essentially takes up that whole portion of it, and even up above that, there's vacation rental units in that stretch, so, I mean, I mean, there's a high percentage of commercial uses in that particular district, and, I mean, this district was created, and I don't remember exactly when, but I would say sometime in the, you know, 90s or something like that, when there were struggles with, I think the area at that time was zoned residential, and, you know, these resorts that did exist in there were trying to, you know, improve their properties, and there was always a challenge that the uses weren't even allowed in that district. I think then the city felt that there was a need to make a change to the ordinance to reflect the fact that these uses were there before zoning, just as much as the houses were there before zoning, and the activities were conducted, and they weren't going away, so we weren't trying to eliminate them. We just were trying to, I think, provide for their kind of long-term continuity, some long-term continuity. So, or anything else, Michael?
I don't, you know, parking, we've talked about in the past, parking is an issue, you know, does it meet the requirements for parking? That's something I'm always concerned about, you know, and if it does, you know, I think it meets what it's asked for.
Yeah. Well, and I would, you know, propose that we do give this permit.
So, Hal, if you would like to make your motion now, maybe we will, you know, be done with the discussion portion of it, and see where we go. If,
I will make the same motion as presented. Because of the zoning qualifications, if we turn it down, we'd have to have a good reason to.
Yeah.
If you want to change that stuff, you got to change the ordinance.
And so your motion is to approve the request for the conditional use permit with the requirement that they provide
Yes.
the off-street parking that the ordinance requires.
Yes.
Okay. Is there a second to that?
Second.
Okay, motion has been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay,
Okay, thank you.
based on
So-
I still base on number 4, if you want the reason.
Okay, so we do have to make the findings of those 4 items. And the first is that the use conforms to the land use or comprehensive plan of the city. The zoning district is the resort commercial neighborhood, recognizing the distinct nature of this area. And it's only a couple blocks long, but that this use is consistent with that, the uses that are allowed within that zone district. That the use is compatible with the existing neighborhood, and obviously here, the lodging uses that exist on both sides are, you know, have existed there for a long time, and this use would certainly be compatible with those existing uses. The use would not impede the normal and orderly development and improvement in the surrounding areas of uses permitted by right in the zoning ordinance. Any of the uses that are allowed would still be allowed within that zone district, although it's, at this point, pretty well-developed area of the city, and, you know, there's really not vacant lots to develop. I mean, there could potentially be redevelopment, I suppose, if somebody would choose to buy something and redevelop a lot or a site. And the last is the location and character of the proposed use is considered to be consistent with a desirable pattern of development for the area. And I think you just have to go back to the purpose of that resort commercial district in the state of the statement of the intent, that the purpose provides. So, is there anything else, anybody else would want to add to that?
That's good.
All right, thank you. This will be put on the council agenda next week. Next item on the agenda is new business, Winterstone final plat. And you recall, we had this plat on our agenda last year, and we approved the preliminary plat. It has been completed and sent to the council in final form. The council has referred the final plat review to the planning commission. Anton, do you have anything you want to add at this point? I see we have a new drawing here. Is this something?
That one?
Yes, yes.
That one.
Really the... You want us to come up there?
Yeah, please,
Yeah,
I
if you
mean,
guys
just
could
so
just-
you can be on the microphone.
Oh, you can shine. You want to come up to...
Right, I'm here, that's the right answer.
So what we have is an 8-unit or 8-lot subdivision. Property is 2.74 acres in size in the R1 zone district. This would be a residential development. There'd be a new gravel public street that would access the lots. There's stormwater ditches and a pond. The pond is down in the lower left-hand corner, outlot A. And it would all be serviced by new municipal utilities. I don't know, anything you guys want to add to this, I mean, when we gave the approval last year, we required that there be a minimum 50-foot right-of-way, that it was contingent on final street and stormwater and utility design. That's what you've provided here. That there would still be, there's a variance that would be required for Lot 2, Block 1, because it doesn't quite meet the 10,000 square foot requirement. And that was done in order to avoid wetlands within the development. And then on Lot 2, Block 2, it was short of the required depth. And again, that was done to avoid the wetlands by the road. So that's kind of where we left it. At this point now, you provided us with engineering drawings, information about the stormwater and drainages.
Yeah, I think that's what our mostly challenge with working with Eric from MSA, who did the engineering, is working around I think at the time of preliminary plat, we had, I think our initial impacts were something like 14,000, or it was a bigger number than what we can have for impacts. So we ended up, which is all included in the drawings there, as far as like how we had to reconfigure approaches, and I think that was our big thing, just to make sure that as the, on the wetland side of it, so our impacts would be, our objective is always to try and find the minimal, the least impacts as possible. And so it took several iterations, but we were able to get it down. And then once we were to get those down into the, we're hoping acceptable numbers. We're waiting for Army Corps approval, dealing with the county on that. So, we still have a few steps, a few more agencies, and I think we have to get a few things signed off on the engineering on the city side, but that's, for the zoning, the stuff that you guys are concerned with, it's the making sure that we addressed all the issues that you guys had brought up, or any issues you had brought up in the preliminary plat meeting. And I think we have. This actually, I wish I'd have gotten a copy of this before, but I just saw it today, what you guys have for your packet that just kind of reviews and lays out everything. But you guys have, if you have questions, Eric drove here, Charlie, we're open to answering any questions. And
Well, I guess, my question would be, just to start this off, because of the wetlands out there and, the impacts on those wetlands, the need to provide stormwater, drainage and everything, you've done that, you've shown that. You're working with the county on the wetland
Yeah.
disturbance, and are you buying replacement credits, or do you?
no, our total impacts for the whole development are 9,400 and something square feet. So
Okay,
it's been maybe not a point of contention, but maybe, just because there is a certain amount of de minimis that you are, and when the property was purchased, we had the wetland delineation done beforehand, and it was purchased from two individuals. So in theory, if you were to try and develop one of those, you'd have 10,000 square feet, and try and develop the other one, you'd have 10,000 square feet. But when they were bought by me, then it became one parcel, so my de minimis got chopped in half. And so that's what led to a lot of there's been, I don't even know, a dozen different, how can we do this? With right-of-ways, initially, I think we had considered running up the alley, and that wasn't going to work because they found a endangered species of flower in the county right-of-way. So that would have impacted that. And so we also have the DNR is doing an assessment to make sure that what this is fine by them, or letting us know what extra precautions we have to do to do that, to protect that.
and all the building sites, the pads, and the locations are such that you will be able to meet all the setback requirements for any of the structures that would be built in there.
Yeah, and so what we did in looking at that is we had general ideas on, each lot will have the house designed specifically for the site and how they'll interact with the neighboring houses. But one of the, what we tried to do is find, if there's an area where we could maybe have a little bit larger of a footprint where we weren't going to have impact issues, we sized them as such on the drawing so that we'd have that flexibility. And even in the areas where we were going to have impacts, we said, okay, well, let's be reasonable. What is it that we want to try and put here? The potential, though, is that, obviously that's showing here is what our maximum disturbance would be. And we can always pare that down if we decide oh, no, we want to, instead of a 30 by 30 pad, we want a 24 by 24, depending on exactly what shape the home takes on, each particular lot. We can do that, but we wanted to, even on the upland lots there in Block 1 where there is no wetland issues whatsoever, you'll see there is actually still some pretty small footprints that are put on there.
Yeah, we don't have dimensions on here. What's the smallest dimension of that building pad site that you're showing?
The smallest one is going to be the one down on Block 2, Lot 4, is it? The one that's down
Yep.
at the bottom of the curve?
Okay.
That one's,
That was a 24 by 36. And
you might have that one.
they're
too.
probably, if you've got, it's sheet ST2 if you have the whole set of civil drawings, but just after the next one after all the red colors, there are some small dimensions on the pads.
Yeah.
Yours are tough to read because they're 11 by, or 8.5 by 11, but
Yeah.
yeah, it looks like your smallest one is like a 24 by 36, with probably the biggest being that lot 1, block 1 with a
Yeah.
40 by 60.
Yep. And the only limitation to that really is the need to clear and grade to meet those, because on those upper in block 1, you don't have the wetland issues that provide the constraints, so.
And our objective is to keep privacy buffers, not only for the future, the homes that'll be placed there, but for surrounding, the one, I guess I had a couple phone calls from folks that got letters, but one of them was from the house that we did just across 2nd Avenue West, and they knew about it when they bought the house, because I told them what we were planning on doing, and they just wanted, they wanted to know, like, if we were planning on leaving, a buffer. And if you look at the drawings, of course, the letter that was sent out showed one picture. It didn't show all of this. But it does show that, besides the natural buffer that's outside of my property line, there is, there is some area left undisturbed there for trees and things.
Well, I'll open it up to commissioner comments or questions at this point. Anybody have any questions specific to the application?
Of course.
You're just waiting.
I'm new for this, so
That's
okay.
fine. No,
That's
this
what
is good.
happens.
This
That's
is-
what happens.
You can only say that for so long.
I don't
So-
have any questions, but I want to remind, and I've been redundant about this for many years, that 65% of this city is tax exempt. So we should be looking out, encouraging any development, and this is an opportunity to put development. And we have to keep that in consideration because it's going to catch us. You got the hospital, the school, that's great. You got the tourist park, tax exempt, that's a $50 million piece of property with no, if your present value accounted it loses $1 million a year. And I'm not gonna get into that because I know I can't change it, but I think we always have to keep that in mind because as things change here, our operating costs are gonna go up to operate this city. When I was chairman of the Public Utilities Commission, I had a hell of a fight to put on half of the fire hydrants didn't even work. And so there's a lot of things that we haven't done around here, and I've been around here a long time, and I've always been a proponent of development. If you don't have it, you lose. So I am in favor of this.
Mr. Mike, did you have anything you wanted to ask or state?
I mean, our report goes through, the requirements and spells out the terms and how this, the application satisfies those requirements. So, I mean, it's pretty clear, in that respect, so. Stacy?
I think I have questions about process.
Okay, that's fine. Go ahead.
Yeah, Anton met with me, went over this. I think as a citizen, I think great, wonderful. As sitting in this chair, I'm like, okay, I don't know what that means from this end. So I look at these and I studied these. He tried to explain it to me. I went online to say, what do I need to know this? And I got this big long question, thought, I'm not going to learn this. No, he's got an engineer. I don't know. Is this right? Is this where at the city
Yeah.
level?
And that's a good question, because none of us are engineers.
Yeah.
I mean, they provide these engineering drawings for us to get a basic understanding of what it is that they're proposing to do. But you'll see in the memo from Mike, he suggests that if we are going to consider approving this, that there's 3 considerations that we should. One, that we make sure that the city engineer has an opportunity to review this, and, I mean, don't expect us as laypeople to review engineering plans and expect.
Right, I wanted to know who I was gonna go back to if something was wrong. Who's,
The city has a
Yes,
city,
okay.
city engineer, so we would have somebody take a look at these plans to make sure that they're gonna, because they're putting in public utilities.
Right.
And we
Which-
wanna make sure that this works in our system of utilities, sewer, water, and electric. The stormwater is gonna be adequately addressed, so we don't have complications or problems. That's why they hire an engineer, so that
Right.
they can, and that's what we ask them to do, is to provide that
okay, so I
information.
just wanted to make,
Yes.
wondered where that happened in the process. Did it happen before this vote, or after this vote is
It
okay?
happened-
That you're saying that,
It happened
so-
when we received the preliminary plat, and we said, yes, this looks to be reasonable, come back with a final plat that contains this information, and that's
And
what,
somebody else is going to review this.
yes, we don't have to be,
That
the-
it's-
we don't have
knows
to be
what they're
the
reading.
the technical experts, because
Good.
that's not our role. It's to make sure that somebody else does that review, so that, it is taken
Okay.
care of.
So my next question, when does the city take ownership of the road and the infrastructure of this project? Where does that happen in this process?
It would likely be spelled out in the development agreement, so that when the developer is completing the work that's required through the development agreement, which is another of the requirements that we don't get involved with, that's more the legal side, so our city attorney would be working with Mike Roth to help develop that development agreement to make sure the city's interests are protected. The developer understands completely what they are required to do to satisfy that, and then everybody has to sign off on that, so.
And so then I go to, this road is a city road then, and would require maintenance and plowing. And have you talked to county about plowing, and are they okay with this design, or do we worry about that? Or what happens?
Those are good questions.
Well,
When the city engineer would be looking at the design of that road, the engineer should be making sure that it satisfies our requirements for construction of a public road. Again,
And that was even called out in here, it's in this, talking about radius and grades and those, right, Eric, you
Yeah.
probably could speak more to what, or maybe even Charlie, when he was laying out how we can make our, pencil sketch overlays over the existing plat, how we could make those things work to make sure our radiuses were such that, that it can be maintained.
yes,
You
and
know,
I
we
think that-
obviously have to, this isn't the end of it, right? I mean, we've got many years of building stuff up there. So we have to navigate it and make sure that it works for taking deliveries and, all that. So,
Fire.
So do you have a life cycle for this road and infrastructure? Is there, are we talking the road 30 years, 50 years? What?
Gravel roads are pretty easy in their own, just because, I think asphalt pavement, they usually say like 20 years, but a gravel road, every few years you're gonna get some, if it's not every year, they're gonna, grade it, they're gonna have to grade it to keep the potholes out, but there's enough gravel roads around that they're already driving around with the grader smoothing things out, after the snow comes and it frost heaves and you kind of flatten it all out. The road itself is just limited maintenance of, add a little bit more gravel, you end up grading it and it goes, keeps going until you get a little bit more of a pothole, you fill it with some more gravel. So the road itself is pretty good. The utilities themselves are, it's a standard life cycle for any utilities that are done in the city. So it's, we actually had reached out to the city engineer of LHB and discussed with them what materials they want, what so what materials and what they like to see, or what the city requires up here. So water mains are ductile iron pipe. They say ductile iron is usually, I think they say about a 50-year design life, but we all know that design life usually has a pretty good factor of safety. And even so, I'm down in Duluth and they're redoing some of the bridges down there. Bridges, they say, is a 50-year design life, but there's ones that are 70, 80 years old already. So, it's not saying 50 years this thing's going to crumble into ash. It's just saying that's their general idea, but that's the same as anything else that's been put in the city. So, we're not putting in any subpar materials. We're gonna put in all the materials that meet any county requirements, as well as there's a city engineers of Minnesota specification that there's a lot. I don't even know how many cities use this as their standard specification, where it specifies materials to use and things like that have been tested for years upon years in various areas around the state. So,
Okay, thank you. Anything else, Stacy?
Do we know what this will cost the city after it's done? We've got these 8 lots, we've got this road. Do we know what? I'm wondering about the return on investment. Okay, we get a road.
Yeah,
We get
I
new
don't think-
property tax.
I don't think we do any kind of economic assessment of the return or
Because-
cost expense type.
I kind of think we should at least think about that, because I hope he sells each one of these, and I think they will, but there is a risk to the city. We get this built, and they don't develop, and we have costs associated. He's going to try his hardest because he wants his money back, but there is a risk, and we should at least know it. Because right now, we're getting $1,000 off of his property, the city. That's going to pay for this building and other things. Hopefully, he sells these lots, we can get $3,000 to $6,000 more, depending on what they sell for. But what's it going to cost us for this road? Well, if it's going to cost us $4,000 and we're only going to get $3,000 more, my taxes are going to pay for that road. I don't think that's going to happen. I certainly hope that's not going to happen. But I just think it should be at least discussed, and what is the return that might cost us. So,
Yeah, and we don't have that information, I can tell you that.
I think we better get it for next time.
But it's an interesting point. I mean, I appreciate it. It's the assumption that the taxes that will be collected because of this new development will pay for maintenance of roads and new gravel and plowing, and I guess you just make that assumption. But I don't know either, and that's a good question. I'm going to guess, or maybe that will be part of the developer agreement. I'm not sure if that's either. Do they talk about that, or does the?
I don't think so. I don't
Okay.
think that's part of the development agreement, to do an economic analysis.
I believe, I appreciate what you're saying, Hal, develop this place, generate more tax, good for the city, I get it. We talk about a need of housing, I get it, makes sense to me. One concern I always have is, like, in the summertime, it seems like, the sewer system seems to, like, labor, I don't know if that's correct, I don't even, but like in the summer, like when it's, we're really busy, you can smell it, I mean, like, will that be addressed by the city engineer? Is this going to play a role? I don't know.
Yeah, well, I can tell you that the sewer plant has capacity to handle
Great.
additional development. I think it's 50%, added capacity would not put the plant over its limits. It's got plenty of capacity. When it was rebuilt, 25 years ago or whatever, that those questions were asked, and I think that what you're referring to is those odors that have been happening. It has to do with Well, it has to do with handling of the sludge material that they're trying to work on some different
Okay.
systems for doing that, and it's unrelated.
I don't know, you know,
Unrelated to the.
Great, I just saying, you know,
Capacity of the plant, yeah. So,
Yeah, that's,
okay. Well, I would like to open it up, and this isn't a public hearing, but I certainly know that there are neighbors that are here, and if anybody has any questions, I think this would be an opportunity to, express any concerns or questions that you might have.
Well, I just have one, and I just like to know what it's a piece of property, how it's
It's zoned R1 residential,
in residential.
residential, yes.
No short,
That's the
no
way it's
short,
gonna stay?
no short-term rental.
Yeah, no VRBOs.
Well, I mean, it is, that's what it is. I mean, we can't predict what somebody in the future might do, but, it is, that's the way it is today. And, I mean, we've taken a pretty strong stance as a planning commission, even the council, to try to protect our residential zone districts. So, I mean, I can't see that changing to something else. I mean, it's an area that right now is pretty much exclusively residential, and I don't see that there'd be any real reason to make any changes to that. I mean, it would have to be driven by something, but I don't know what would cause us to want to make a change to that.
Yeah.
Anything else, Rory, or?
I just wanted, that's my only concern.
Yeah. Okay.
I just wouldn't want it to become VRBOs or short-term rental stuff.
Yep.
Yeah, well, and we've made it very clear that the R1 zone district is off limits to vacation rentals, and, I mean, I think those that had tried to start up, we stopped those, and they're no longer being operated as vacation rentals, so.
So if somebody, just hypothetically, if somebody did come and ask, what would it take from them to have you change that?
Oh, no.
Can I ask?
Yeah, I don't know, I mean,
No, I'm
it's
just-
not allowed in that zone district, so it would have to be an actual rezoning of the property
They'd
to
have to
allow,
rezone.
I, from experience, the house that's still for sale up there, the one on the Gunflint, somebody tried to buy that, or it was for sale, but they gave me a full price offer, but they wanted to VRBO it. And I said, well, you can't do that. And they said, okay, well, I said, I don't think you should, and I don't think you can, but, whatever, if you want to fill out the application and take it to City Hall, well, it didn't even get across the desk. He's like, this isn't even, it's not even an applicable or a permittable usage. So it's not like, it didn't get to the point where like, I'm gonna pay you this fee and it's gonna come before the planning commission. It's not even something that can get brought before.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I told them was gonna happen. I said, it's not, you can't do it. You can't do it, but they wanted to try it, and I was like, well, okay, you can do whatever you want, but it's not gonna work. So, that's, I mean, from that tried to happen, I guess.
I think
in the neighborhood.
we could probably offer you as much protection as to say that the R1 district does not allow vacation rentals, and the only way to change that would be to change the zone district, which seems totally,
Yeah, I don't even know how that would happen.
yeah.
Yeah. At least at this
Anything
point.
can happen if you've got a pocket full of money. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I could add to this.
Yeah, Fritz.
Previously to buying property that I own, which is adjacent to Anton's, Lee Creech hired someone to look into the exact thing we're talking about here. Okay, so Rory, I have some information on that, on the zoning problems, and this was previous to it being city, under the size of the city. It was county, this was 05, I think, and so it's Rory, you're right, you can do anything eventually if you got enough money. That's what we base our total economy on.
Well, I would hope to think that the city council and the planning commission, would hold hold firm to the values that, you know, people have expressed, and that's that those residential areas are to be used for residential purposes, not short-term lodging. You know, and I, you know, I mean, that's all I can say is, I mean, I can't speak for anybody that comes into the future and, you know, might have this come before them, but, I mean, the way it stands today, I don't know how that could ever be changed.
I've thought about opening the motel right there.
So you go
For yourself, Fritz?
I guess I'm shot down already, so, huh?
For yourself? You could charge yourself and go in and out. It'd be great.
No, I can sign up there.
Okay. Anything else, Fritz, or Dave?
No, I just thought I'd help contribute to the conversation.
Well,
Thank
thanks,
you,
Fritz.
Councilman.
Milsey?
Appreciate that,
Huh?
yeah. David?
I do have more on this eventually, but, well, there's some things that haven't been discussed.
David, did you have something?
Well, I was curious if we could get some history on the last time a subdevelopment was done, aside from the North Star development. Thought you might give some history on that. Maybe it was Humphrey Circle, or was it something on the west side of town, or?
Yeah, Humphrey
The
Circle.
most recent one that I know of was one that our office did maybe 4 or 5 years ago, kind of down by the Gulf there, Ravenwood, I think it was called. It was real similar to this. The only difference on that one is they were much bigger lots that were intended to have their own utilities and not be hooked up to city sewer and water.
Yeah.
Okay.
And nothing's happening there right now, right?
I guess I haven't paid any attention to what's going on there.
Well, it's in my mind, it's been a not common thing for this to happen. It's kind of a big deal, and it's
It is.
much needed.
Yeah.
A part of me is sad to lose some of the landscape in that neighborhood, but the way Anton has designed his other homes there along the trail, I think he's done a real tasteful job in maintaining kind of that feel. And I just know his values and how he respects the land, and so I'm pretty supportive of the project all in all. The concerns I did have were more about just that catch basin and where that was going to go.
On the bottom there?
When they put the, I'm sorry?
Is one
Lot A.
No, Lot A.
When they put in the Gunflint Trail, it was before I owned property there, but I saw the effects of what I believe is a little bit of mismanagement of the drainage there on the school property, and I haven't investigated where that is exactly, but that would be my only other concern is, you know, downstream from
Yeah,
this.
where's this gonna go?
But it's already, the damage has already been done, so I don't think it's gonna make it
And I
worse. Kind of what they had done is they had put the drainage straight across the Gunflint versus at a diagonal is where it should have been, the outlet there. So I don't know if that's the spot or not, but I don't know if you've been across the street there.
Well, yeah, Eric can probably speak to that a little bit more, but where, where the road, the new drive enters onto 9th, there's a culvert up there that basically lines up with the alley on the north side of 9th Street. That natural drainage, if you walk that, goes and should exit down into the ditch. But when they put the ditch, the rock line ditch in on 2nd Avenue West, that edge of that ditch is actually higher. So they created a bank there. So now instead of that water just moving through that top corner of the city block, it hits that bank and you can see what happens. And then they put the Gunflint Trail in, and now it just is basically low compared to the grade of the Gunflint Trail and low compared to the bank on that ditch. So it turns that bottom, corner into wetland. So Eric can confirm, but Outlot A is to be deeded over, and there's the full build out for what that looks like. It's catchment, and then that is actually tied into the stormwater, the curb and gutter that's in the Gunflint Trail right now. On the north side of the Gunflint, there's stormwater inlets. So that ties in and then goes into where their system is. We did do, not me, Eric did, both the existing land, how the soil, what the conditions are right now for stormwater, to see what happens, and then used this to run the model, and then the city also paid, and, well, at some point in the past few years, did the stormwater management plan. And so I know that in the conversations of all this, that they were planning on using the model that Eric came up with, or the design here, to see how it would run, how the model would run at different rain events. Of course, they never gave us their data, or did they ever give us, like, well, we need this, you know, is it designed for a 3-inch rain event, a 10-inch rain event, a 20-inch rain event, right? It's not designed for a 20-inch rain event, because, you know.
Yeah, and I guess
Nothing
what I was more curious and concerned is too strong of a word, is south of the Gunflint Trail.
Right, yeah.
And so I just didn't know how things lined up, because I know when the Gunflint Trail was put in there, that there was some mismanagement of those.
Cross culverts.
Yes, thank
Okay.
you. And so I didn't know how that tied in or anything. And I did see on one of the drawings that there was an outlet just south
Yep.
of the Gunflint, directly south of Outlaw A Basin, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I just didn't know how that tied in versus like jutting over or whatever.
Yeah, so there is I think what happens is, you know, water coming down the Gunflint gets picked up by the storm sewer on the north side, and then that there's a cross pipe right more or less at the right by outlet A there, or outlet A, that looks like it has an outlet that'll go out down the back, or out down the hill there. And that is based on kind of what I see. You know, I don't know exactly how the pipes are underneath there, if everything that comes, you know, down the Gunflint ends up turning and going out that culvert, or if there's actually a pipe that keeps going down the hill to a lower discharge point too. But the way that I look at it, it looks like it turns and goes out there, which, yeah, we're tying into that that inlet there with our pond, and our pond was designed to actually it takes flow off of Anton's site and discharges it at a reduced rate from what it's existing at. So you're getting the same amount of water, but you're actually getting it over a longer amount of time. So that helps. Instead of getting like a really big burst out of that pipe, it'll actually cut that back to more of like a, you know, medium trickle for just a little bit longer time than a really hard one for a short period.
Yeah. So, yeah. The other thing I was going to say is, you know, again, I'm not an engineer, but I don't know how this would worsen the situation, but it sounds like it improve the situation.
Yeah, it's obviously not doing anything for any existing flow. You know, it's not changing anything that's in that pipe right now coming off the Gunflint, but anything that would have been coming off of Anton's site should be getting should have a decreased flow over a little bit longer time.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, and that's pretty standard. Typically for stormwater on a development like this, you are obviously adding more impervious site. You're obviously, you know, adding houses. You're adding the road, things like that. So your runoff from the site actually speeds up in time if you weren't to put like a pond in. So that's where the pond requirement comes in from the state. Actually, that you have to at least meet the existing runoff or reduce from there, and that's based on and I wonder if I have the numbers. It's based on different. You have to do it for multiple levels of events. So a 2-year storm is, you know, something that would happen every 2 years. A 10-year storm is something that would happen every 10 years, and so on. So you have to do it for. I believe it's a what is it? It's a 2, 10, and 100-year storm. So you get to the level of a 100-year storm, X amount of rainfall, inch over area, and you have to reduce that number, which can get tricky based on, how much impervious area you're adding to the site, so.
So does that pond have retention capacity for
Yeah.
a 2-year storm?
Yeah, so
10-year
the-
storm? Obviously, it's
so
not going to have a capacity for a
the
100-year
pond-
storm, but,
The pond has retention, it's not going, water's not gonna flow over the berm of it, even for the 100-year storm.
right, because it'll go through the outlet.
Because so as it builds up, there's a structure inside the pond that has a hole for flow at the 2-year storm, and then it'll build up a little bit more, and then there'll be another low overflow. And once it hits the top of the structure, there's a lot bigger one, which your rate is still decreased in the 100-year storm, but you aren't going to overtop the pond. And obviously, we can't design for a 500-year. Duluth had the 2012 flood that you can't design for something of that magnitude, or you can't be required to design for something of that magnitude because his pond would be the size of the both bottom. Probably include some of that outlot or some of that lot 4 on the bottom because you're going to have such a large area that you're trying to collect water to.
Right, thank you. Any other,
I'm just gonna say, Ivy, please. Okay.
Fritz, you had something else?
Well, I have a couple items here,
Yeah.
being as I joined this property here, and there's gonna be a vacation of a dedicated street, and what's on the engineering plans, and that is half that street, half that 30-foot right-of-way, which is 3rd Avenue West. Okay, the little jot out there, so there's 30 feet wide, I guess, maybe, and probably 1,200 and some feet. Okay, that's on the drawings, that is part of this plot. But where does that leave me next door with 30 feet and the disappearance of half of a city street? Okay, so this is the part, that's one point of discussion on this issue, and it seems to me that I'm willing to vacate that street if the city is, because it does, or does it remain the city's property, that half a width of the street for those 6 lots that are mine, okay? And that needs to be somehow delineated on paper, whatever the results of this board.
Yeah, and I don't know the answer to that question. I think that's a question for, to pose to Mike Roth,
I just got the vacation form yesterday from Mike. And Charlie then today did both the vacation for the ownership on my share and the ownership on Fritz's share to show what the legal description is of what the vacation is asked for versus saying it's the northerly 240 feet of Van Buren Street or 3rd Avenue West. It's the legal description of what's going to happen. And then also on the engineering plan, which you guys have and what Fritz has, shows where one of the things that when we were talking is that we vacate that, if he agreed to vacate that, so we could actually get the lots that we needed to and meet our 10,000 square foot number that the city calls for, that I would run sewer and water up the right-of-way that stays behind, right, the southern portion. We would run sewer and water up to within, we don't know what we're gonna hit, but as far up as we can go, if we can get it all the way up onto his property, we'll put it right on his property line. If we hit a 50-foot long stretch of bedrock, then we have to
Maybe not.
talk, but it's, that's the what we've talked about.
That's what the second point was, my second point was going to concern that, the water stub, the sewage stub and the water stub, and where that location is going to be, which is flexible at the moment. We don't know because of what the earth is there, but some, and I don't know if we take it this far at this point, some type of language of what Anton and I have discussed verbally is put into this replotting, or if that's what you want to call it. But that is written down just for my insurance purposes, you know, that these discussions hold faith and hold true. And which you know, it's just good to cover it verbally and maybe little dots on, right, that's all, you know, and in case one of us dies, do that, you know. So, or me having been in this game for a number of years realizes you pull out a map and all something isn't there, you know, that as because you're using this existing one for where the stubs are. And that, okay, well, so if someone, a city employee goes out there, looks all day and all night for something that isn't there. So that has to be taken care of in final documentation when, even after.
That might be something that could be included in the development agreement, so it's spelled out what that relationship is. You know, I don't think we're gonna solve that. I mean, it's not really our deal to solve that engineering side of it, but I think it's relevant. What you're saying is that it should be documented, so if something happens to Anton or something happens to you, that those rights.
Exactly, and I'm bringing that up at this point too, because I have 3 buildable parcels along that 3rd Avenue West, okay? So, size of the sewage pipe, especially, coming off of 3rd where it's stubbed, and which is, you know, that needs to be large enough to accommodate that, since it is the only place for it to go, fundamentally, unless you, and.
Have you had that conversation about the
Yes,
size
we've
of the
had
site?
that.
Okay.
But it's on here, it's on this, I saw it, and it's on here, it says for neighbors, so aren't we approving this then, and so it's documented?
Well,
Yeah, I think
for
what
his
Fritz is
purposes.
just saying is that how, you know, if something would happen, and just to make sure that it's clear, if it's included in the development agreement, then it's spelled out.
Right.
I mean,
It's not, the pipe that, you know, it's the locations where the little blue line is and the dot, and then the green line ends, the sanitary stub, which is green, and the curb stop, which is blue. Those we all both agree are arbitrary at the moment. We don't know where they're gonna be. Okay. But we do know, for the sake of this discussion at this point, that there are 3 buildable lots directly north of there that are going to be the routes for sewer and water in the future. Sure. And that's the consideration that needs to be.
Clarification,
Yeah.
when the city abandons or vacates a road, as in this, or a street,
a right of way.
a right of
Yes.
way, so is that just nomenclature, and now that abandonment in nomenclature of right of way, the right of way changes, it's now becoming a utility right of way, or is that land going to Anton?
Yeah.
It's city land that's being vacated, and now it's Anton's land. What's the exchange there?
I know.
Is there money exchange, or how does that
Usually
work?
not, but
He just gets it because he asked for it?
And we get the road.
The adjacent property, well,
Well, you're vacating the road.
We get the new
Yeah.
road, we get the new road.
a number of right-of-ways have been vacated in the city over the years, you know, and when the original plats were created, the lines were drawn, and, you know, the lots and blocks were defined. The development pattern maybe wasn't such, or maybe the likelihood of needing that for either a street access or utility access is not relevant anymore. And so therefore, you know, the owners can come in and make a request that right-of-way be vacated, and sometimes they are, sometimes they aren't, and if they are vacated, the land reverts back to the owners.
But does this vacation, did I hear it right? This vacation will influence potential property owners adjacent to this vacation?
Fritz and I, just the 2 of us.
yes, and if you only vacate half of that right of way,
can't do
that leaves me with the other half that isn't
Yeah.
vacated. I'm trying to be efficient that both of these things happen exactly at the same time to save the taxpayers and me and everybody money, okay? As a responsible city council and as a responsible planning board and on and on and on up the scale, it's all money. And if we can do these things at the same time, because everybody gets charged a lot of money by the big shots, right? So, so generally, it goes back, that land would go to me.
Yep.
The compensation the city gets for it is that it now becomes on the tax rolls. And I pay, property tax on it.
So the 66-foot wider way for that 240 feet, 33 feet of it would go to the adjoining, to the left, which would be Fritz, and then to the east would be me.
Thank you.
All right, I think we'll cut off discussion here and bring it back to the planning commission. Commissioners,
Okay.
comments,
Can I actually
questions?
bring up one thing really quick, like some rough math here? I looked up, you were asking about like what does it cost and what is the, so the house that we have sitting up there right now, so the city share of taxes on that are $1,778 a year. So if, which, if you bring that down, because we're not gonna build as expensive and it's not gonna be as much land, right? The estimate in taxes would be about $12,000 a year coming from the properties when developed. That would be again,
12,000?
yeah, a year.
I
between
I
the-
don't think you mean 12,000.
No,
All
No.
the properties.
all of them.
Yeah,
Each
well,
house.
when the whole thing
Oh,
is
12,000, okay, the
For,
whole.
for
Total.
the, for the
Okay.
lot.
Total
yeah.
for all
So
eight.
you
That
said-
would seem
Yeah.
reasonable.
You said that
I said,
Right.
I was just checking other places, same size,
Yeah.
similar. So, yeah, like I had a range.
Right, yeah, so that,
Depends.
yeah, so that would, and that would be the potential collection on just the city's share of the property taxes. And then also, even though I'm paying to put the road in and the infrastructure, then I also am paying the hookup fees. So that would generate about $26,000 worth of fees to the city. Each time I build a house, then I pay a portion of that to have the pleasure of hooking up to the infrastructure that I put in.
Thank you.
Yep.
Costs far more, is far more expensive to put in a
Well,
well and
septic.
septic, so,
Yeah.
that's
So-
it's a bargain.
Going back to where we spent $15,000, I'm really hoping that, my personal opinion, that this company says we don't need 10,000 square foot, or
Oh, yeah, right.
Absolutely.
And, but we're requiring it for him, and if he thinks he can make it work, yay, good for him.
Yeah, I know.
That's what
Well, that's like I said,
What?
we have to operate under the rules we have
Okay.
in front of us. And yes, I would hope that we see some changes, some solid recommendations based on that study, but
So if we,
Until such time.
if we approve this and we say 10,000, that's,
Well, we
yep, that's
have
it. Then, and he doesn't build right away. And then, next January, we say, nope, you know what, we're getting rid of lot size minimums, whatever. He hasn't built yet. Is he locked into this? Or can he
well, I mean, he
change his
could.
design?
But
But then that requires
he would have
starting
to
over
come back
from
and he'd
you.
have to start all
So,
over again.
if you're okay with this,
Well,
knowing we might
there's a
change.
certain limitation in capacity for these lots
Yeah.
too.
That's
just
true.
because of the
Because of the
wetland
yeah.
issues. So, I mean, could you take some of the block one lots and reconfigure those so you could create more?
Right.
Maybe, but the utilities are if their utilities are already in there, you're kind of, you've already cast your,
Okay, and he's gotten so far. so-
Charlie, man.
There was a lot of playing around with the layout and design of this where you want, oh, geez, it'd be nice to give a little more to this lot. Well, then all of a sudden it takes from another one. So there's been a lot of behind the scenes sitting in the office playing with this, trying to come up with something that works for all these lots, that balances out and doesn't leave a, bunch of undesirable lots that don't have the size or anything that you want on them. So there's been a ton of planning involved and, multiple designs of trying to figure out what fits and works the best already has been
And-
done.
I'm impressed with your work. I like this plan.
Well,
I hope it works.
and
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
Okay, a motion has been made and seconded to approve the final plat of the Winterstone. Now, it was suggested that we provide contingencies for, those three items, that the city engineer sign off on the design, that the council enter into a development agreement to address the adequacy of the design, construction, and financing of the public improvements, and that the developer receive all necessary permits and approvals for the proposed work. That's part of
That's
your
what
motion?
I motion is.
Yeah.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, vote aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Thanks.
On to the next step.
That's right.
This is something that I think, in terms of addressing housing issues in the city, we don't have more lots to develop on. We don't have an ability to expand the housing capacity in the community. Nordic Star Development, did that. This is going to do that. Maybe we'll see more of this in the future. So,
Thanks.
with no other business, we are adjourned. And you get to your,
I will.
yeah.
But that's how come I knew how many questions